Welcome to the African Career Podcast, and I'm your host, Pardingtone Nhundu. We here at the podcast, we talk about anything and everything in between starting a career and actually fulfilling that career. So we talk about how you're supposed to make the decision, what happens in between, the realities, the theories, and the good, the bad, and the ugly, like my good friends say about the life of choosing a career and living that life. But interestingly, today we are starting a series on career politicians. What does it mean? What does it mean for you who is looking into someone who you're calling a career politician, who is even a career politician? Is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Then in the studio today to have the first episode upon this series here in Nairobi, Kenya, we have Nerima Wako. She is a very serious public defender for human rights and youth empowerment in terms of how do we then as young people get into this space to participate in the best ways that we can. Nerima, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I think I'll just get into it before we talk about anything else. When people hear the term career politician, a lot of things goes maybe in their minds. But what does it mean to you when someone says career politician?
When someone says career politician, I think someone who's been in politics for decades, a large number of years. What it makes me think about is the same old faces we're used to seeing in our own politics, but it just doesn't happen in Kenya. It also happens in other countries as well, where you see particular names and families being in politics for a long time. So I would say someone who has grown in terms of age in our news, in our mainstream media, and in politics. So someone who has been in that space for more than 10 years, to me, is a career politician.
If you say that, I'm from Zimbabwe, so I knew Robert Mugabe from the time I was born and until the time he left, when we then had another president into the mix. But what is the main difference between a career politician and any other career profession that we see? A teacher, a medical doctor who is in the profession 30 years plus. What would be the key difference between these two guys?
So I have a very different opinion. And for me, career politicians in Africa mean something different. It means most of the time it's people who have violated the law by extending term limits, because you talked about Mugabe. We can talk about Museveni, we can talk about Biya, we can talk about, name them, people who have been in presidential seats for decades, and they manipulate the law to be able to stay in those presidential seats, because term limits, you're supposed to only be able to stay for 2. So I wouldn't call those career politicians. I would call those lawbreakers. It's as simple as that. But then when I think career politician, I can give an example of Honorable Martha Karua. She was member of parliament for 20 years, and she's still in politics today, where, she was last seen in 2013 running, and then she also went in 2017 to run for the president, and then she also went in 2022 as deputy president. That's a career politician. So even right now, she's still very active in politics, even though it's on the opposition at the moment. That's a career politician. So someone who, member of parliament, doesn't have term limits. You can have a member of parliament even 5 times if you think that they're doing a good job here in our laws. And that's someone who the constituents trusted her enough to vote her in multiple times. So we've seen people serve positions of power because it's within the law, where people have voted them in. That's a career politician. That's different. And I find it fascinating that when I engage politicians from other countries, I was in France maybe a few weeks ago, and you know what's happening with France. We've seen what's going on with Madagascar. And Macron, is he going to make it to the end of his term? No, he's struggling. How many prime ministers has he had? Several. And there was a member of parliament that I met, and first time member of parliament, and he's frustrated. He's like, I'm exhausted. In fact, I've only served one term and I don't plan to vie again. I feel I've done what I wanted to try and do in terms of agriculture. It's been tough. I've had some wins, I've had losses, but this is not something I want to stay doing. And he said to me, I don't think I'm a politician. I tried it. My community voted me in. I've tried to lead from government. It's not for me. I've had some wins, but I'm definitely not coming back. It's very difficult to hear, especially Kenyan politicians say, I've done what I can. It's not for me. I'm not coming back. Those words I have never had a Kenyan politician say. They will even fight, even though they know they are terrible members of parliament. Even if they have to fight their way through and rig their way through, they will. And those are what are creating these career politicians that we see today.
Maybe they are doing a good job.
No, they are not. Some of them are even intimidating their way there. Many people don't even want them.
So what would be the key difference between, all right, not a key difference, but as we are talking about career politicians, what about, do we focus only on the appointed ones or the elected positions, or the two are the same?
I think that they are the same, because we have witnessed how nominations have led to people being elected. Classic example, Sakaja, coming in as a nominated member and then now moving into being an elected member and now the current governor of Nairobi. That's an example. Honorable Millie Mabona, same way, nominated. Lesuda, same way, nominated. So there are people who have used nomination seats that have led them to elective seats. But there are also people who have been nominated and then we never see them again. They just phase off. They struggle with building a community. They struggle with even being voted back in. Even their presence is not felt within the houses. And so I would say that it works for some people. So those people who are able to use nominations as a platform to add elective seats is a career politician. But people who struggle to transition from a nomination to an elected seat, that's not a career politician in my view. But it's also very difficult to enter politics and then not be labeled Mheshimiwa. As long as you have vied before, you stood an election before, the people will always call you Mheshimiwa. So there are certain responsibilities that even if you lose an election, you don't get elected, that still remain with you. So anytime there's a funeral, there's a fundraising, people want to collect money for education, people will still reach out to you. They'll be like, Mesh, nisaidie. Like, just give me a little bit to support my family. So that tag will always remain with you. So in people's minds, you will always be a politician to them.
Yeah. So as you have said, career politicians can be the presidents who have gone, this term, that term, another one, or it can be members of parliament, or even at ward level. They continue to be in those positions. But does it not create entitlement? At a certain point when they are supposed to let go, then we have a new breed of leaders to come in.
Yeah, but also, it's tricky. There's a certain level of privileges that you get once you are a politician, from security to getting certain access to mortgages, school fees, loans, fuel. I mean, it's a lifestyle. So a lot of people get used to it and they don't want to let go of the lifestyle of being a politician. And then there's the element of, even if we are to think about how we portray successful politicians, my grandfather was a politician, and I remember he was in the first government in '63 under Kenyatta. And I remember when he retired And he was a very honest man. He died honest. And the front page of the Nation then, and we still have the cover, this is the 90s, it was him in a shuka on the farm. And it basically read, you know, from politician to peasant. My grandfather wasn't poor. He was just living an ordinary life as a farmer. He had retired from politics. So it's also very difficult to say it's an entitlement. There's also this certain pressure that's put on you that, you know, once you're a politician, we should never ever see you ordinary. You can't be average again. You have to have the lavish lifestyle, the lavish cars. You can't go back to normalcy because people see it as you are unsuccessful. And that's how my grandfather was recorded in history. And it's a shame that he's people that we forget that he was a man of integrity or honest and worked hard and came from a minority community and led this country. But those are the stories that we never hear. You will hear of the Biwots or families that have these grand resources, like you're driving through Nairobi, you're like, why Guru owns that? You're naming politicians and the malls and the buildings that they own. So even that sense of entitlement, it builds this sense of shame if you don't have the resource to show that this is where I am, this is where I've made it. So for many of them, it's that pressure to stay within these circles. You have access to certain tenders, and it also gives you certain privileges and certain respect from community. I think it's a complex question. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, but as you were saying it ended up like you get into the position. First of all, you're for the people, but then you're like, let me deal with my family first before I'm there for everyone else. But to something else, when we're trying to separate or to juxtapose career politician and any other qualification that is out there, does politics require you to have a particular qualification? Or anyone can just run with the stick?
Right now we're seeing anyone is running. Anyone is running. At the moment, that's what we're seeing. And it's unfortunate because we have lost servant leadership. And sometimes I really enjoy reading memoirs or bibliographies or autobiographies from people who have been in politics before. Because you realize that not too long ago, politicians were the least paid. Like many of their stories, they struggled to even make ends meet, and they were members of parliament. And this is not even long ago. This is like even the beginning of, say, Martha Karua's career after being a lawyer and joining politics. So I think that has shifted completely to where now we have members of parliament as the highest earning in the world. That's what has changed, where they continue to increase their salary, that it appears that for you to be successful in Kenya right now, you have to be linked to politics in some form or fashion. That's the problem, where we have brought the incentive of politics is access to becoming rich quicker. It never used to be like that. I feel that if we changed it to, this is a tough job, the pay is meager, it's terrible pay, but you work for the people, then you will have passionate people joining politics. Those who just want it for the incentive of riches or fame, they are going to let go of it. But right now what we have is the worst crop joining politics. And then those who you are like, you should join politics, you should enter, they're like, I can't do it, it's too dirty. Like, I can't even engage with my fellow members of parliament because we have nothing in common. And it's one of those things where it becomes extremely difficult to do the right thing because everyone around you is focusing on the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. So it ends up frustrating people of goodwill and servant leadership.
We met in Harare.
Yes.
Close to 6 years?
Imagine.
6 years ago. our main training then, you were training me on youth leadership for public office. From that experience up until now, and I know you've been doing that work even before you came to Harare.
Yeah.
Can public leadership be taught in any given way? The ways that we've been having, have they been successful? Or we are just missing something across Africa? Not only for Kenya, but your experience is across Africa. What's the missing link? Can we teach people to be politicians?
I think so. Because when you look at, there's a school, it's called SPPG by Dr. Obi, that she started in Nigeria. So SPPG stands for School of Politics, Policy and Governance. And the main idea is to reach out to, they call it like class A kind of people who work hard, passionate about their country, people who are outliers, and reaching out to them and saying, why don't you serve the country? Why don't you enter government? And they go through almost a 1-year course. And so right now, they've done it in Nigeria, they've just started in Kenya, they're actually starting in Zimbabwe, and even in Senegal. And so this is a dream of hers. And there are people who have signed up in Nigeria. Out of the, I think, 15 people, was it 35, who actually vied, nobody won. But they are going to keep encouraging people to participate and join politics. So I think the thing is, can we have enough people with the same mindset in government? We don't need many. We normally say this joke that a parliament that works, especially like for Kenya, for instance, we only need 7. We only need 7 members of parliament who are progressive. And they just create a caucus and say, we're focusing on the Kenyan people. And out of those 7 people, you can have so many laws passed and so many commissions protected and corruption actually minimized. So it's not that you need hundreds and thousands of people that are good or good-willing to enter government. You just need an integral few that are focused enough to make the changes. So I do believe in it, and I do think that, even I'm focusing a lot in Kenya, but I think some of the lowest positions in government have the highest turnover. So for us, it's member of county assembly, right? And it's very difficult for a member of county assembly to come back twice. Like normally the community knows this person is performing so badly, we don't want them again.
I thought the turnover was because of frustration.
Yeah, but there's a turnover. It would be different if, even though you're frustrated and this individual bribes you to vote for them and you still vote for them, I would not have hope. But even when you have an MCA that's frustrating you, that you feel doesn't act or is not responsive, and you kick them out, that for me is a success. And even our polls right now are showing that about 95% of members of parliament are not going to come back. That's high. That's high. And out of the members of county assembly, it's at 74. We are used to the high numbers at members of county assembly, not at members of parliament. At 95, in fact, the Star reported 99%. That's high.
Yeah,
that's
could
high.
be high. But you talked about values. You talked about servant leadership. From my studies in political science, we were taught that politics is a dirty game. It's not a game for the faint-hearted. When you're strong enough, then you get into the game. So now you're talking about values. Where is the space of values in this whole game? Everywhere you go to, maybe the intensity of the craziness of politics can differ.
Yeah.
But there is that jungle-like nature of it. Where do we bring in values in that whole space?
So we know the basics of politics is just negotiating who gets what, when, and where, right? But I think most politicians, no one is perfect. I feel that bad politicians have their own selfish interests overtake interests of country. That's the difference. Interests will always exist, But for me, bad politicians is where self-interest has a high margin compared to what public interest should be. And that divide is what creates this conflict and creates this tension. And so, like you mentioned, this is a problem that's happening everywhere. I mean, if we want to talk about democracy, let's look at the United States. People are frustrated with Trump. They can't believe some of the things he promised during the campaign. He's not meeting those promises. Why? Again, interest. So we're seeing a lot of support for businesses. We're seeing a lot of support for tech companies. We're seeing support for even countries and entities that people are like, no, this is not what we agreed in the campaign trail. So that's because he has now come face to face with interest, and he has had to select where his interest lies. So for me, I don't think that anyone is perfect, but when it comes to politics and morals and ethics, it's completely different. I think that there are some decisions, no matter what decision you make, someone is going to get hurt. There's no like complete equity when it comes to political decisions. I think good politicians try to make choices that the least number of people are harmed by your decisions, but people will be harmed. I think that's something that's important to recognize. And one of the things that I have learned doing this work over the years is I have learned that sometimes you have to be with people at the table that you can't stand, you don't like, you will never be with, but politics has brought you together. That has been a tough lesson for me, and a lot of my colleagues and friends are activists. And so I normally find myself, because of my work, I work with politicians, I work with activists, I often find myself in this middle ground where I'm like, we cannot completely burn bridges, because the whole essence of politics is negotiation. And so if we are not going to speak to each other, then what country do we have?
Yeah. So, okay, from your experience, I'll come to activists and politicians at some point, especially on the transition part. Do activists transition to be good politicians, or they just, it's good for them to remain as activists? But from your experience, the people you've dealt with and the people you've seen, which profession makes the worst politicians ever? What I'm saying, where I'm coming from is, there's a point, or maybe it is still there, that there are so many people who complain in Zimbabwe about lawyers getting into politics and not giving the results. It's just a conversation that goes online and everything. But from your standpoint and from what you have seen, which profession makes the best politicians and which profession makes the worst?
I think that's tough to gauge. I think I wrote an article where I said it's true. We actually have the opposite problem. People will join politics and then start studying law. So once they become politicians, they're like, let me study law. That's what we have. But I would say that even when you look at the kind of people who have been elected, a lot of times it has to do with character. Because there are people who I had high hopes for, and then in just a year or two, you're just like, hey, this person has changed. And so sometimes it's good what power and money reveals who a true person is. So if this person was even somewhere else, they had won the lottery, they would have behaved the same way. It's not politics. I think it has a lot to do with the character of the person, not politics. But we have seen a lot of teachers join politics. A lot of our politicians have come from unions. We have also seen a lot of our politicians coming from legal, and some of them with no educational background. Some of them were even questioning whether they even graduated. How far did you go in school? We are not sure. We're even over here double guessing their qualifications. So for Kenya, I can't say it's a particular career, because let's be honest, we have gangsters who are in cabinet. I mean, we have CSs who are drug lords. So I don't think it's about a career. We have them all. We have them all.
What about the transition? Do activists make most of them, when they transition into full-time politicians, do they transition well? Do they transition? No. I'm just saying. Well? Do they? Why I'm asking that?
Why?
Is because I also wanted to maybe also, as you are answering that, also think about, do student activists also transition well into mainline politics? Because student activism has a nature of its own, has an environment of its own. If you then decide as a young person, as a student at an institution, you've been running student politics for some time, right? Then that transition into mainline politics, what does it take?
Yeah.
What is it that you're supposed to change, if you're supposed to change anything? The same way, activists transitioning into mainline politics, do they do a good job when they transition, or it's best for most of them to remain on the lines of activism?
So that's an interesting question. So when we started Siasa Place, one of the first things that we did was a study around student politics, and we were focusing on UON. And that year, it was 2015.
UON, University of Nairobi.
Yeah,
okay.
University of Nairobi. And I remember how we went and did an actual observation, and we recorded violence. In fact, I think somebody ended up getting stabbed on voting day. We witnessed voter bribery. We also
This is university elections?
Yes.
Okay.
We also witnessed politicians interfering with the process. And it was like the sides were ruling party and opposition. Like they each had a candidate they were supporting, and they were channeling a lot of money. I'm talking millions.
This is into student politics.
Yes,
yeah.
Into student politics. So this is one of the first papers that we did. And the conclusion we came up with was, oh my goodness, because the candidate who ended up winning, it actually showed us that whoever won on campus wins the national election. Because it shows your party strength, it shows your mobilization power. UON is in Nairobi, it shows who has the capital, and this is something that we saw that early on, and we were like, oh my goodness, this is fascinating, where in fact when we would interact with student leaders, they would be like, I wasn't even tribal. It's until elections, I'm looking for the Luo community, the Kikuyu community. You're looking for now which community is going to vote me. And there's something important that happened after that. We have the Duale Act that happened. The Duale Act, in my view, changed how young people organize. Because you talk about student leaders. I believe we used to have the creme de la creme of student leaders. We know a number of our politicians today who grew up on campus and became known in national politics because of student leadership. Now, when the Duale Act changed how we vote for student leadership government and looking at councils, so not only are you standing and saying, I'm going for Secretary General, you have a whole team that you have to campaign with, and a lot of times, the team that is supported by the administration, the deans, are the ones who end up getting elected. And we also noticed a decline in participation. Students used to care about this stuff. They used to line up because there was this momentum, this passion. People would go campaign. When it became 5 people, 6 people, but I like you, but I don't like that person with you on that ticket. I don't even want to engage. How did you even have these people in this ticket? We have seen a huge decline in student participation on our campuses, which for me is a huge issue that's constantly being challenged in court in terms of appealing and repealing that law, but it's not going to happen. So to answer you, the politicians that I have seen that have transitioned successfully are the older politicians. And this came about after Babu Owino was so popular on campus that he was a repeating student government leader, and he would have a lot of protests in town and put the city at gridlock. To some point, Duale got tired of it. That's why it's called the Duale Act. And he was like, nah, man, we need to stop this student who just doesn't seem to be graduating, and we need to remove his powers. And that's how they brought about the Duale Act. So Babu Owino is actually the one, because of his actions and the powers that they saw that students had, that now brought about this law that has diminished their powers. They still protest, they still mobilize, but not as frequently and as organized as they used to.
Which is unfortunate, because across Africa, many countries got their independence because many of our black students were doing student activism. And that's how they would rally up the masses in every other place. What about activists into politicians?
Yeah, I can give an example. Professor Kivutha Kibwana, he was an activist and entered human rights and then became a politician. Governor, two-time Governor Makueni, people even argued that while he was in that governor position, Makueni was often quoted as one of the best performing counties. And a lot of people actually wanted him to go for president. And even though not everyone will agree that he was the perfect governor, but it showed you that it's possible to make that transition. And I can also give you an opposite example. James Orengo, also a governor, Siaya, that is performing so poorly right now. But that is also a successful transition of an activist into a politician. And these are people who people often forget that they used to be student leaders. But they've transitioned into politicians and politics so seamlessly. But like I mentioned, these are the older politicians. With younger, I'm seeing them struggling, because even the ones who graduated most recently, I would say from 10 years ago, I've seen them standing and vying for positions. I've seen them join political parties. They've gotten some appointments here and there. But then as far as leading from the front and being voted in as a politician, I am yet to see that transition happen.
Okay. So I'm trying to wrap around my mind from what you said before. If I can take you back. When we started the conversation, you said a career politician is someone who is in the office 10 years plus. Is it? So can we safely say a term limit should be 10 years? Or it should be 5 years on repeat? Or 5 years, you're elected this time, you do, we go to an election again, then we come back again. But even in that space, as we are looking at this timeline, I'm also thinking, young people, do they then stand a chance when we continuously have the same faces? I don't know, maybe it's because you're doing a good job, so people continuously vote for you as a member of parliament for the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. Unfortunately, member of parliament, no limit. If people like you, they like you. But what then happens to young people getting also the space to come into leadership?
We've also seen young people become member of parliament, and I would say a career politician is more than 5. As long as you've done one election and you go and do another election. And the reason why I say this is because politics is very traumatizing. It's traumatic. I know people who have vied once and they're like, I will never, ever do that to myself ever again. And it's unfortunate because politics continues to get more and more violent. I pray that we have more career politicians that are younger, that even though they do it once, they try and they say, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to do it again. But it's becoming more and more difficult to hear young people say that, just because of the kind of environment that they have to go and fight in. So it becomes really difficult for young people to enter politics just because of how expensive it is, and also because of how violent it is. And we are seeing a rise in both. And what we really push for is the reduction of that, and for elections to be more transparent so that they are more fair and they are credible. if the playing field is leveled, then we will be able to have young people coming in and even vying for member of parliament. Because what we have right now is people who have enough resource to bribe their way through to get people to be able to repeat vote for them, even though these are people who never see this individual as soon as they are elected in. They'll be like, this person came and bought for me unga and vegetables and cooking oil. I have to make my promise to vote for this individual. That mentality is what has to change. And if that mentality changes in the public, where they now look at the leader themselves and not necessarily cap it at an age or cap it at a gender, then we will have a different kind of representation. But right now, if people measure what success is in terms of what are you giving me, then we will always have it very difficult to have young people, especially those that don't have access to as much capital, being kicked out of this political arena.
Out of interest, how much should a young person have to run a campaign for a constituency in Nairobi?
You
to run for member of parliament? What
member
would be
parliament?
What's the approximate budget you need to run a campaign?
At 20 million. It's at 20 million minimum. That's like a good campaign. But there are some who have run with even 5 million and less. But I've also watched people sell everything that they have, enter debt, depression. I know a young man who vied in 2022 and he's never been able to get out ever till to date. And this is 3 years later. And he's someone who had a steady job, very brilliant, but then entering politics just drained him and he's just never been able to get out of that hole. So it's a worry when we see how expensive elections continue to be, politics continue to be, and there's no accountability. People are not asking you where you're getting your resource from, and then there's no limits. Like, the limits are already too high. For presidency, it's 4 billion at the minimum. I mean, what young person has access to 4 billion? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. But anyway, getting back to career politicians and how they are supposed to do these things and everything else. We have seen the Gen Z protests in and there across now, Nepal, Nairobi, and other places. But there seem to be a missing link for all of them to actually say all these protests or all these young people can actually agree on who can lead them as young people. So don't we have capable people as young people to lead us?
That's interesting. You find that the missing link. I find that the strength.
Yeah, because it's a social movement, right?
Yeah.
Which is not organized to some people. But then some people say, at the end of the day, yes, we have this social movement. We have moved our protest or our campaign from one stage to the other. But the next stage, to clean up everything else, we then need the capable leaders amongst us to take us to the next stage.
This is
so
where
if I take you back, where I'm coming
from,
where I'm coming from is, I remember, if my history serves me well, when Mugabe took over, they were all in the bush fighting and everything. Then Mugabe made a deliberate effort, like any other leader, I think, across Africa soon after independence. They made a deliberate effort to then send their fellow comrades to school for them to get particular skills, for them to then come over and take over the different offices after independence. So that's where my mind is focused on, to say, okay, there's been a successful protest, there's been a successful this, that, and these are Gen Zs, as we are calling it, you know. Where are they? Where then do we bridge the line to say these are now the leaders to take us forward? That's where I'm coming from.
And I still disagree with you. I understood you the first time. But the reason why I have a different opinion, which which I'm excited about, is because if you look at the history of mankind, we grew up in African culture in communities. We have councils of elders. There are some that had kings, but they were different systems of government, right? Mm-hmm. I think what's happening today is Gen Z is questioning democracy. Gen Z is questioning capitalism. I think we're in a shift. Because even if you were to look at like European history, there was a moment all European countries were being led by a king and a queen. Each of them have revolutions of when the people said, enough. We want to be led by the people. Kings and queens, they don't understand our problems. The only monarchy that survived is the UK. But even with the UK, it's an ornamental family. They're there in the palace, but they don't make political decisions. It's the prime minister, the house, with parliament. So for me, what I see is the people. They're revolting again. And they're saying, okay, our ancestors did it hundreds of years ago. They didn't like king and queen method. It's not working. We have gone to people voting and participating. It's not working. But what do we know? We know, as a society, we want people who can do their job. We're not saying that we can do the job better. We're just saying that you are not doing the job. So in all of these places, which I find fascinating, it's not about me being in power. It's about who can get the job done being in power. And that's why I find Nepal extremely interesting, because of the criteria. People were thinking about people with track records. They were thinking about someone who understands and it had like a strong stance on corruption, a principled leader, one of values. I mean, this is so removed from our everyday politics. I think the globe's changing again. And I think that autocratic leadership is scared. So even when you see what happened in Madagascar, again, it's autocratic power, police state, saying we don't want this anymore. We want access to basic needs. We've been having no power. We don't have access to basic needs. What are you doing? Get out. So I'm fascinated that we have a generation here that doesn't care for the systems that are put in place. All they know is the system is not working for me. Find a way to make it work. And they are saying to people like our parents who have believed in this system for so long, even though they know. I mean, we're watching leaders, going for elections in their 90s, 92. And his own daughter said, don't vote for my father. What generation is this?
For that one, I have a different outlook from that one. But anyway, my point then from what you're saying is, yes, we have seen that this is not working, and we are coming into the street and saying, this is not working and we need something else. What then makes a difference, which I'm now understanding from you, from what I was saying, is I know that what you're doing is wrong. I might not be the best person to replace you, but I know that what you're doing is not right. I would need someone else to do that. But in some circles and in some spaces, you will see the conversations where young people then say, oh, you old guys, leave. Young people are now coming into we're replacing you, and we take over. That's where then my question was coming from. Okay. In that instance, where are these guys to then come and do that replacement? If we say the Africa we want, if we say the Kenya we want, and we say the leaders we want, who is developing these leaders? And do we, by any chance, right now to say, I think if we get an opportunity to parliament right now, we have 7 young people who would be of repute to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Yeah.
They're there. I'm actually talking to a number of young people that I know that are brilliant and encouraging them to enter politics, just because we cannot be having your brilliance in other countries or in international companies. Like, we have to build our nation, and the moment is now. And I normally say, thank God for age. I'm so glad that we all die. I am. Because what we're seeing is a generation that has refused to let go of power. But now they're getting too old to be able to maintain those positions. And it means that the younger generation that is brilliant enough to see the opportunity to come together and push that. And the difference is our parents grew up thinking success is I have to get a piece of land, I have to be able to own my own house. If I get a car, I've really made it. I've really made it now with all those three things. Try and ask young people what success is to them right now. At a land, we're not even like I need a piece of land. Like, I must buy a house. Like, guys are just like, if I can even rent my own room. Yani, if I can just get out of the ghetto, and even getting out of the ghetto, what is that? It's like if I can get out of a shanty, if I can have access to credit, data, Wi-Fi, if I can live comfortably, I can eat every day. Because people are eating one meal a day. I think our challenges are so different from what our parents faced. Gone are the days people used to just go to the village and depend on the land to survive or depend on family members to survive. We're seeing households where parents are depending on their kids to survive. This is reversed. So for me, that kind of stress and overload is what we see in the young people we engage every day. And for them, they just want a country that works. Yani, if I can just work hard and be paid for my hard work, I'll be happy. Like, I don't have to have the millions of money and accumulate and have land and have... Like, it's a completely different generational shift. So we've become, actually, in my view, more social. People care about mental health. People care more about how people are doing. People care about that stuff, which 30 years ago, you would never talk about something like that. People would think that, wewe uko na kasoro, like there's something wrong with you, and you're talking like white people. Like we don't have such conversations.
I remember someone saying to me, if people get all the basics, not all of them, but a large number of them, they will have no issues with politics. They will never be interested with politics. But anyway, you have been encouraging young people to come into politics. One of the biggest things for me, for someone coming into politics, like you have mentioned, people invest a lot into it, and sometimes when you lose an election, it's a big blow. How do young people then manage that frustration? I know for other politicians, they manage the frustration probably with corruption or by enjoying the lifestyle that comes with a political position, appointed or elected. How can a young person manage the frustration of losing an election?
That's tough. Because I normally tell people, we look at the person vying, but it's the whole family. It's you and your whole family.
If they are voting for you. We have one guy in Zimbabwe, during elections as a presidential candidate, he voted for himself. So even the wife did not vote for him. But I'm saying so.
You see, now imagine that kind of heart. Anyway, so I'm saying this because even your spouse is going through that election with you, and your children are. Because, we've talked about the money aspect. We've not talked about the emotional aspect. We've not talked about the bullying, the trolling that even your kids see online, on TV, that even your spouse never sees you because you're constantly out campaigning, making deals, you're sleeping 3 hours, meeting the people. So there's a whole spectrum of challenges that politicians go through. And I would say that a lot of people are not prepared for it. At Siasa Place, we do offer wellness, where we have a specific program for people who are young and are interested in politics, and they just sign up and they get free therapy and they get free relaxation, they get time out, because we're like, guys, you're going to need this, and they're already signing up for it, and it's 2025. so that you have the capacity to realize that this is something that, me, I've seen people go mad. You know, people lose their mind. They can lose their mind because of an election.
Is that not one of the key things, that when someone then get elected, they will sometimes forget everything else and enjoy the perks that comes with being in office?
They're just dealing with the trauma.
They're dealing with
healing.
the trauma. They're healing. But anyway, because I'm trying to think, with all this, how does then someone continue being a career politician? But anyway, another point, as we are drawing to a conclusion, we always have the same. Okay, I feel like as a population, we the ones who fought, we the people, we do not realize the impact of the members of parliament that we vote for. They are the same people who then constitute a cabinet, and they then constitute key ministers into different ministries that we have. I always feel like sometimes our presidents then find it difficult to appoint reputable people or people with the particular skills in the different ministries, because we the people have voted someone that we like, but they do not have the qualifications that are needed to the next stage. How, from your point of view, how do we manage that balance?
So, two things. I've seen governments where presidents have made the right choices in terms of appointments. Another thing we also overlook is the way cabinet secretaries or certain ministries are run. And with this particular administration, we've seen a lot of political treats going to certain ministries. And we have noticed just what a difference it makes when we can talk about health insurance, where we're seeing millions of money going to non-existent hospitals, or sometimes hospitals that don't even look like they are a level 4 or a level 5, receiving resources of a level 4 or level 5. So we've seen the difference that makes. And I agree with you, where a lot of times also when you talk to young people, they think president. They don't think MCA. In fact, a lot of them, they don't even know who their MCA is. Or if you ask them, who's your member of parliament, they don't know. And those two positions, in my view, impact you even more directly than the example that I've given about health. And this is a worry for the work that we do, and why it's important for us to relate. And when we go to the counties, when we go to communities, the first thing we ask, like a group of people we're just meeting, is what do you think is the most challenging issue in your community right now? You'll hear stories from access to a health facility, access to a market, access to toilets, even in public schools. We have learned that there are some public schools that don't have toilets, and there are students that are as many as 400. So linking how those issues can also be linked to the kind of leadership in your community. So for me, once people see that connection, then you will see people now asking deeper questions about how is a budget being spent, how is our representative speaking in parliament or in the house, and wanting to make sure that they're involved in that process. So I'd say that it's very slow, but it's something that can happen. And it's something that we're doing, because more and more people are now articulating this stuff on social media. So you don't have to be in a physical community engagement to know what's going on these days. How many stories have we seen where it's the public that will highlight an issue and then mainstream media will pick it up? We're seeing a lot more proactive citizens coming out and say, this is not right, whistleblowing, calling out leaders. They're the ones who have now taken up, you know, the aspect of representation, which is what our leaders are supposed to do. So in the future, it's going to get a lot harder for our leaders to hide behind this, you know, cover of the public doesn't know what I do, the public doesn't know who I am, and I'm able to get away with a lot of things. It's going to be harder for them to do that.
Why do you think professionals, people with degrees, reputable, good ones actually, they run away or shun away politics? Then someone without any qualification, then they run with the politics, then that person gets a cabinet seat, yet they do not have any qualification for them to be maybe the best person in that particular room.
I think people want to, especially professionals, they want to just be able to do their job. And the politics of the day, when you have a president who says, we're launching the Nyota program, and he does a whole gazette and says, all PSs, CSs, leaders, you must be in the community educating people about the Nyota program. That's crazy. Like, these people should be focusing on their ministries and their roles, not educating the community on a program that belongs to the National Youth Ministry and Employment. So when you have a leadership that doesn't understand the importance of particular roles and mechanisms that exist and structure and system, then someone who's a professional will be frustrated. But then when you have someone who is just looking for the next place to be able to build an opportunity, a name and fame, then that becomes a very fun place to be, because it means that you can do everything but your job. You're doing everything but your job, because you're gallivanting with the president, you're campaigning, you're not doing your job. So that's why you have people who are not supposed to be in those positions, going for those positions. A professional will be frustrated. They'll be like, I'd much rather be in the office doing what I need to do, not out here campaigning. This shouldn't be my job to campaign. And so that's the disconnect that we have right now.
What has been your biggest frustration? Your biggest frustration, not from the work you're doing, but from the politics that is around in terms of leadership?
Audacity. There's a lot of audacity from individuals. It seems so simple just to lie to the public and not being held accountable. Sometimes watching some of those committee hearings and the kind of responses you receive, if I was in a company and I did the same thing, I would have been terminated with immediate effect. But they seem to have this immunity and protection. And that's very frustrating for me, because these are people who are doing this with taxpayers' money. That's even more painful for me. People can barely have enough resource to eat, more than one meal a day, and that's what you choose to do with that tax.
What about your biggest moment, your moment of the greatest gratification in politics? Like, oh, I did that.
I've sued government multiple times at Siasa Place, and we've won a number of cases. And every case we've won, I have that moment. So it's from, suing the appointment of the chair of the National Employment Authority to, we were part of the case under the housing levy, to even a more recent one that we recently lodged. We've won a number. So every time we win is a happy moment for me, where the courts stand with the people.
Then lastly, your message to the young person who's going to win in 2027, so that they don't become the bad apple of being a career politician for the next 20 years.
I think actually 2027 is it's going to be a tough year, not in terms of winning, in terms of meeting your promises. I think Kenyan people have lost a lot of patience. And if you are choosing to vie, you have to be focused and serious with the promises that you make, because people are listening and they're paying attention. And because of that, people will get pissed off at you even faster. Kenyans don't have grace right now where we are. So I tell any young person who wants to vie, and I keep telling them, meditate on it, pray over it, and be sure to what you're saying. Because these ones, if you are elected, you will not sleep. They will demand impact and outcomes from you. They will not have the same grace we have been seeing.
Thank you very much, Nerima.
Thank you.
This has been a lovely one. I certainly hope that we'll reach out to some people to know and appreciate politics as it is, that it is a ubiquitous one. Actually, in the morning, I was getting a haircut, and my barber was saying, 2027 is coming, and I doubt if I will go and vote. I actually say to him, you should also know that by not voting, you have voted. Especially for the person that you don't like. You've automatically voted for that person. Then he said, oh, okay. Now I'll go to the next election with a better mindset so that I go and vote. So thank you very much for this conversation and the nuggets that you have given us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This has been the African Career Podcast. This is the first of those conversations. We want to talk about career politicians for the reasons that we should know and appreciate the leaders that we have. But we also want our leaders, as the good dancers that they may be, that they should know that there is a particular time that they should get out from the dance floor while the music is still playing. Thank you very much, and see you in the next.